When someone hears, like me, a layman, location manager, my first thought is you pick the location. But it's more complicated than that. Can you give us a rundown of your duties and the things that you would allocate out to your assistant location and to Lake and for instance and so forth? How would that unspool?
Okay, so in the early years when things were just starting up, we didn't know how long it was going to go, and maybe things were smaller, lighter. It was Jamie and I. So yeah, everybody assumes I find all the locations, but Jamie's a big part of that. I send my assistant out. From the beginning, I read the script. I run down the hall. I talk to the likes of production designers, producers. Sometimes the director's not in town at that point, but the writers, what they envisioned. Sometimes the writers later on the later years would say, when you get to this location, this is what I was writing it around or for or envisioning. So they're almost setting you out the door to say, okay, I'll see if we can get it for those dates. Sometimes if the scene was small and there was a larger scene, we would concentrate maybe on a house that we could blow up, but we know that we needed another look of a house. Well, we're going to have to piece that together in the same neighborhood. We don't want to move all the trucks and all of this. So I would send Jamie. So we do that in the office, myself as the head of department with other heads of department, and they would give me a picture of where I'm going. Sometimes they'd say, try and keep it close to the studio because the rest of it is all in the studio. I would then send Jamie out and say, look, we're looking for this particular house, but we also have a school. So try and find them close together. Go find the school. We'll have parking for the trucks there. We'll be inside the school, find the house in that neighborhood. So, some teamwork. So then he would go out and look for it. Later on, that was all Terry Brooks' job. Because it was so busy and doing both episodes, Jamie would be on set. I would need a separate scout for the locations. And then they would bring it back to me and I would shortlist it. And then I would bring that short list when I knew that this house doesn't work because it's too far out or nowhere to park the circus, as we called it, or it's, it's a one-way in and is not going to work. Yeah. So I shortlist it, and then I'm bringing, and at that time we didn't have digital, it was file folders with pictures all taped together, and you would go boop, 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 and you would have that panoramic. So then I would bring that to the writer that wrote that episode, John's sitting at the helm, production designer, all of this. And then we would often narrow it down to maybe 3. Sometimes they knew right away, yes, that's it. But sometimes we would nail it down to 3. And then we would go on a survey and see which one would really work, because you have to see it
Of
live.
course. Absolutely. You have to be there in person. When you're first handed that script, when you begin the process, how many days, weeks out, ideally, from shooting are you?
Oh, sometimes overlapping. Okay. They were really, it was fine-tuned. So it's not like sometimes, you're hearing that we don't even have the next script. Kind of new, even if it wasn't on paper or hand it to you, you're talking in the office. The writers are across the hall from me. So they're saying, hey, coming up in a couple episodes, we're going to be doing something in the snow, or there's going to be a big camping scene or whatever.
Yeah.
Or because we knew it was Stargate, we'd say in a couple episodes, we know we're going to the dunes.
Right. Absolutely.
So you start the conversation. So I was given good lead time on where I was going, what I was doing, but sometimes those episodes were a lot of locations, location heavy, and some ahead of time they'd say this is location heavy, but the next one's going to be all in the studio. So you had time to come up for air or to work on the one after that.
It seems when we look back at these shows that it was very much a mix of, okay, this episode is almost or is exclusively off-world. That you could anticipate that the next one was probably going to be in-house. You get the sensation just in terms of the ebb and flow of a season, that at the beginning of the season, they're going to spend a lot of money. Then it's going to go down a little bit. They're going to do typically some more budget refined episodes. Then the mid-season comes up. We're going to give a bigger boom there. And it does the same thing on the back end of the season with a bigger finale. So was that kind of am I kind of getting it right in terms of the ebb and flow of a season in terms of
I'm sure you are
budget?
getting it right.
Okay.
I'm sure you are getting it right. And in terms of budget, and that's going to be more where John steps in with some answers. I didn't see it as that. I was just too into what I needed to do for locations. And as you say, the locations wasn't the hard part often, especially years down the road, because we already knew we're going back here. We're going back here. We're going back. We knew where things parked, who to talk to with the city reps. The hard part was if it was production assistant heavy. At the time, you had a hard time getting maybe 20 production assistants because you're going to be on Robson Street. Or you're talking to the liaisons for the city. And as you know, much of our show was gunfire and explosions. That was the hard part because you had to get their blessing. If we're going to the dunes, that's me talking to the tower at the airport for flight path. And believe it or not, yes, sometimes they would work in our favor. So not with the big stuff, but they could keep the small stuff away from us, right?
Wow,
or they would tell us if, you're going to run into a problem that day because they had something going on, whether it be training or winds, whatever. So that's the part that people don't see. They see the location manager, you find the locations. Well, no, my assistants and my scouts find the locations. Mine is often in the office heavy and dealing with all the reps from the cities, the liaisons, the towers, gunfire. You know, it started in my 10 years in film that you could just call that in. But a few years later, you had to have a police officer on set, even if there was a gun visible, even if it was plastic, rubber, otherwise, because of an incident that happened. So, you know, you had to get, it was booking all your people.
It makes sense that regulations evolve as you move forward. You know, I've been talking with fortunate to talk with a number of different people in different arenas of the back end of this process, and things just aren't done the same way, you know, from decade after decade. Things are refined, some things are added, some things are taken away. But the process is streamlined as you move forward. So this is really cool. So you've selected your locations. So John and his team, production, they give their blessing on it. Are you there for principal photography or on these locations to, rub elbows and grease, gears and things like that? Where do you fall in when the cameras are rolling? Or are you busy working on the next episodes?
I am busy working on the next episode. And again, that's the harder part than filming now. It's all set. The trucks are parked, but I always would because it's a long day and Jamie and I had to overlap. Yeah. So often, and I'm still as a result an early riser, but often I would take the early shift before 5 a.m. I do want to go down there as a location manager. It's my responsibility and my conversations with the rep and my, organizing, putting up those signs, no parking. And I want to know when the cameras are rolling at 7 a.m., they actually can roll or the trucks can get in. So I typically would go early in the morning, make sure the trucks can get in, or if it was the night before parking, the trucks are parked. I want to make sure it's set up ready for, and often we could be there for a day, but we could be there for several days. So I want to know the cones are lined up along the circus on the street. I want to know that the PAs showed up. I want to know that simple things like the garbage cans and bucket, they're set up and we're ready to go for this day or days. And then Jamie would come in typically at call, say if it was 7 a.m. on a Monday, he would come in, I would overlap, we'd have conversations, how I want the day to go, what my promises were to the reps, what we talked about on the survey. And he would be there at 7, I would be there at 7, I'd overlap maybe an hour, grab that delicious breakfast, and then I'd head to the office and off I go to the next episode.
Gosh. Thanks for watching this clip from Dial the Gate. You can find the full live stream shows on our YouTube channel or visit dialthegate.com for the complete schedule. See you on the other side.